Welcome to Banking on Experience, the one-stop shop for all your financial services tips and tricks, the future of business and the future of the customer. Here is your host from CRM Next.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. We're thrilled to have with us today Josh Fryday. Josh was appointed California's Chief Service Officer by Governor Newsom to lead service, volunteer, and civic engagement efforts throughout California. Fryday is a military veteran who served as the president of Golden State Opportunity, which led the expansion and implementation of the California Earned Income Tax Credit and other programs that provided financial security to millions of low-income working people in California. He's a former fellow with the Truman National Security Project, a former team member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he currently serves as the board chair for Demos, a national think tank on issues of democracy and economic equality. Welcome, Josh. We're honored to have you with us today.
Thank you, Marla. The honor's all mine. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. So Josh, tell us a little bit about your position. What exactly is the role of Chief Service Officer for the state of California responsible for?
So we have a mission in California of both uniting and empowering all of Californians to be able to mobilize and serve and volunteer in their communities to lift each other up. And when we think about what that means and how we do it, we acknowledge that there's really some critical issues facing our state, whether it's from what we're all going through on COVID-19 now to homelessness and climate change and poverty and racism, natural disasters. And I think what the governor believes very strongly and why he asked me to come do this position and lead this office is that if we're going to tackle these challenges, we need to harness the power of what is, quite frankly, our most powerful asset in California, which is our 40 million people. And we need to ask all people to serve and engage and step up and help out. And then by doing so, we hope to unite communities and empower people to make a difference locally. So that's what we're charged with. It's a big mission, but honored to do it and excited that we have a governor who understands the value of service and volunteerism and wants it to be the forefront of tackling our biggest issues.
Yeah, well, obviously Governor Newsom chose you for a reason. So is there something from your past that made you so passionate about volunteer work?
I think I've always felt, and probably I can credit my parents for instilling this, always felt a responsibility to give back and to help others. And we live in a democracy and in a system that requires, for it to function well, requires everyone to be involved at some level. And so I've just always felt a responsibility to be engaged. And I think that there's obviously a lot of different ways people can be active and in their communities. So I've been lucky that I've been able to serve in the military and serve in local office and also now be able to serve at the state to tackle some of these big issues. So I think we're all very fortunate to live in the country that we do, and we can only tackle big problems that we have if we're all involved. And so that's why I feel a sense of duty and hope others do too.
Well, a little known fact is that you've spent some time as a city council member and eventually mayor for your hometown. And I'm wondering, what advice would you give to others that might be considering a role as a public servant?
Thank you. One of my favorite jobs of all time was being mayor of Novato. I loved it. And unfortunately, I had to step down from that position to take this job at the state. But I felt this was another way that I could serve my community. So I think what advice I'd have to give to others who are thinking about either maybe local elected office or public service in some other realm is that we need everybody. Everybody has something to contribute. Everybody has value and can support their communities in valuable ways. And our system, like I talked about earlier, our democracy only works when people step up to the plate and get in the arena. So I would encourage everyone who's considering it to do it. It's worth it. And it's a very, very rewarding experience. So jump in. That's my advice.
That's great. Hopefully you've pushed some people that were on the fence in that direction. So you also helped provide humanitarian aid and disaster relief to the people of Yokosuka, Japan, following the 2011 earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster. And I'm wondering what lessons you learned from that experience.
Yeah, that was a harrowing experience. My wife, right after the earthquake, hit and the tsunami and then the nukes started to blow and we were in a nuclear disaster. My wife was a few months pregnant with our first son, and so she was actually evacuated, and I was sent out to sea to augment the admiral staff. And I think what the biggest lesson that I drew upon that I still think about every day in this current role is the power and impact of service to bring people together, to create around a common mission and a common purpose, and the power that has to unite people. There's nothing more inspiring and fulfilling than accomplishing a mission with people, whether it's your team at work or it's your family or it's your unit in the military. And what I got to do was see that meaning the other members of the armed services that I served with in that experience, accomplished great things. It was the largest humanitarian aid and disaster relief effort in military history. And it showed that by bringing people together, people will step up and work together to accomplish great things. So for me, the big lesson was the power of service and the power of what people can accomplish when they're given a common mission and a common purpose.
Well, thank you so much for your military service. And I'm wondering now if we can shift focus slightly and you can tell us about some ways to instill a culture of volunteerism into a workplace and perhaps some examples that others could replicate.
Sure. When we think about how do we create a culture of service in California throughout the whole state, what we really need are basically all leaders to step up and create expectation of service and to help build this culture. And that can't just be the governor asking people to volunteer, which he does often, and asking people to serve. It can't just be elected officials, mayors and senators. It needs to be university presidents. And one of the most important communities, I think, that can help create this culture of volunteerism are business leaders and our companies, because that's where most people spend most of their day is at their workplace. And so it's so critical for companies to create this culture of volunteerism. And some of the things that I've seen that I think are exciting and would love to see emulated more is there's some companies like UPS, I know, actually do paid days off for volunteers. So if you're willing to go volunteer in the local community, you can, they give paid days off. And they also create expectations. I think it's really important for businesses to set expectations that they do want their employees to be in the community and to be giving back. But both by creating the expectations and then also the opportunity, whether that's because it's paid or half days off to go do it, I think there's a lot of ways that the workplace can be an environment that volunteerism and service is fostered and thrives in.
Yeah. And does a culture of volunteerism usually pay financial dividends for a business? And, maybe you can tell us some of the soft benefits that might have.
Yeah, I mean, I think, certainly there's goodwill that's created in the community when companies and employees volunteer and give back. But I think one of the things, and we talk about this all the time when we talk about creating a culture of volunteerism and service in the state of California, is there's a lot of research that shows there's enormous health benefits to volunteering. We know that it keeps people, it reduces stress levels, it reduces anxiety, the sort of the sense of purpose and mission that comes with volunteering, and the human connection that's created when you volunteer in the community and you give back, that has enormous personal benefits to anybody, but certainly for employees that are dealing with stressful situations and anxiety. Volunteering can be a great way for companies to help alleviate some of those issues. So we think that and we've seen this, it's not just what we think, research shows that volunteering has enormous benefits beyond just financial. So we're encouraging everyone to do what they can to encourage their employees to get out there in the community. And I think what we've seen is that when people do, it's not just a benefit to the community, it's actually a benefit to the individual. And our governor often says the happiest people he meets and he knows are those who volunteer. And I think it's because those that do feel connected to their community, feel connected to other humans, and have a sense of purpose, which is critical.
Yeah, that's really interesting angle. I mean, certainly reducing stress and anxiety and providing a sense of purpose are all extra critical right now. And
yes,
if you can keep your employees happy, then they in turn will provide better service also. So I can see double benefit there.
Exactly.
But how does the current pandemic, how has that impacted giving back? And, being able to have that human connection when volunteering, how does that happen?
Certainly, COVID's created obviously a lot of challenges. One of the challenges we saw right out of the gate was in places that relied heavily on volunteers. For instance, food banks in our state. Food banks were largely volunteer driven. And because of COVID and because of the fact that many of the volunteers were in the at-risk population, were seniors and older Californians, many of our food banks up to a 70% decrease in their volunteer support. So we actually had to step in pretty quickly, and we deployed the National Guard to meet some of the needs of the food banks. And then since then, we've been transitioning over as we recruited younger volunteers, and we've launched initiatives to recruit volunteers specifically for food banks. So what we've seen is, and that's just one example of there being acute areas of high need that have come up because of COVID, that we've had to try to step up and meet. But I think what COVID has shown, if there's a silver lining in it, and what we've saw with the way people responded to the stay-at-home orders and what we're hoping they ultimately respond to with wearing masks, is that we're all in this together. There's literally no one that isn't affected by this pandemic. Everyone was affected, and everyone can do something. That's another important aspect of this that I think often people feel paralyzed and that they can't make a difference. Well, in this situation, literally everyone can make a difference, whether it be by staying home and being safe, by washing your hands when you do go out, by wearing a mask. Everyone can help be part of the solution. And that's an important message that we've been trying to show, and to demonstrate and to tell people that they can have an impact in helping us get through this together. And then what we've also seen, lastly, just because the point you mentioned is very real of people feeling disconnected, is that while many people have had to isolate as a result of COVID, it's more important than ever that they stay socially connected. So we launched, for instance, a neighbor to neighbor campaign calling on all Californians to check on their neighbors and to check on seniors especially, and to check in with each other. And we just have seen some really heartwarming stories of people who did connect with their neighbors for the first time, or maybe the first time in a long time, and they brought meals to seniors who needed it, and they went and picked up medication or groceries. And so we just saw Californians coming together in a big, big way, and obviously doing it safely. But again, ultimately, what COVID showed us is that we're all in this together, and we can all do something to help each other out.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love the neighbor to neighbor campaign. That's great. So what can parents do to ensure that their kids understand the value of volunteering their time? I know you said that you got your passion from your parents. So tell us how to pay that forward.
Yeah, it's a good question. And hopefully I do what I say so that my boys ultimately one day decide to serve in some capacity. But I think the first thing that parents and any leader can do, whether you're a business leader or university leader or elected leader, is to set the example. So I would encourage all parents to take the time that you have to show how you can make an impact. And again, that could be as easy as doing something from home by checking on a neighbor, or cooking an extra meal for a senior in your neighborhood that needs it, all the way to showing up at a food bank on a Saturday or giving blood. And so, being a parent of three young boys, I know how time is limited, but I think we can all take spare time to set the example and show how you can give back and should give back, and do that together. And I think it's important to, as long as it's done safely, especially in the COVID environment, to take your kids to give blood, and take your kids to the food bank if you can, and do that, make that the family experience. I also think another part of setting the example and making sure that kids understand the value of service in our society is what my parents did for me, which is to teach what responsible citizenship actually means. That responsible citizenship in our country is not just about rights, but it's also about responsibilities. And it's about how we take care of each other and how we help others, especially those who are less fortunate and underprivileged. And so, we're having a remarkable conversation in our country right now about privilege that's long overdue, and certainly cannot be a short-lived conversation. It needs to be an ongoing conversation. But having parents talk to their kids about what privileges they may have and why they have a responsibility as someone who lives in this country to help others and serve others. I think by both setting the example and then also teaching what it means to be a responsible member of our society is probably the most important things that parents can do. But if you have other ideas, Marla, we're taking ideas.
I think you definitely hit it. I mean, they are watching, so definitely setting the example is high up there. Involving them when you can, you're right on there. As long as you can do it safely, even at an early age, it will feel natural, I think, if you involve them in giving back early and certainly teaching what it means to be a responsible citizen. I think that's really critical as well. So I'm not sure I have anything to add to that. That's perfect.
Send me a note if you do, or if anyone else listening does. We'll take ideas.
Sounds great. Yeah, I'm sure there are lots of innovative parents out there. But we're at that part of our podcast where we ask our signature question, and it's really about getting an example of a company that made you feel more like family than a customer, or perhaps in your case, maybe a company that has really embodied the culture of volunteerism, and it's real obvious to you as a customer or any customers.
There's so many companies in California that are doing great things to support volunteerism, both of their employees and in the community. But as I'm just thinking about this, Marla, one example comes to mind that is not a company, so I apologize for that. But and it's probably going to shock the conscience of the people listening. But I had an unbelievably warm and welcoming experience the last time I went to the DMV, and I know that everyone just spit out their coffee, and I know how shocked everyone is, but Governor Newsom, to his credit, when he came in, he said that one of the first things he was going to do was make reforms at the DMV and started a task force. And I think has made some big strides there. And the last time I went in, and I challenged someone else everyone else to go in and to the DMV soon when they open back up. But they were very warm and welcoming, and it made all the difference in the world. And I think what that just shows is that with intentional leadership at an organization, you can create a culture where people feel welcome and where they don't feel just like they're a client or a number, but they actually feel like they're part of a bigger community. So if it can be done at the DMV, it can be done anywhere.
All right, great. Well, shout out to DMV for your culture of volunteerism. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and congratulations to you and all that you're doing as the Chief Service Officer for the state of California.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Banking on Experience. Remember to tune in each week and subscribe, where we aim to simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience.